Hi everyone, I'm Hannah Hansons-Reed, the Education Specialist with Oracle Applications and Technology Users Group. Welcome everyone to today's e-learning session, Essential Elements to Consider Before Migrating Oracle EBS to Cloud. Before we get started, I just have a couple of little reminders and introductions in case you're new to OATUG and our programming. Oracle Applications and Technology Users Group is a community of Oracle users, and we provide education, support. We have a great mentor program for young professionals and more. We also have a few events coming up, including our HCM week in November and Forum Live, as you can see in the slides now. That's happening the first week of December. If you'd like to learn more, feel free to send a message through the webinar or visit our website, oatug.org. And lastly, just a couple of quick reminders about today's webinar. You'll all be on mute throughout the session. However, you're welcome to send questions at any time through the question box in your control panel. We'll have plenty of time at the end for Q&A. We are recording this session, and the recording will be accessible to OATUG members in our knowledge base. I'm going to send a link now in the chat area where you'll be able to access that recording along with the slide deck. And now I'd like to turn it over to Jane Haney from Datavail. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Before I hand things off to Mahesh, I just wanted to go through one quick thing. Mahesh, would you mind scrolling to the next slide? Perfect. Okay. So we are doing a quick cloud adoption survey to try to better understand how organizations are moving to the cloud, what workloads they're moving, and when they're doing it. We are going to be giving away a pair of Tiki Torch speakers to one person in this webinar. We'll be selecting one person from those who fill out the survey. So if you just follow that link, which there is going to be placed, there we go, it's in the comment box. You can just click that link to go to the survey. It'll just take a few minutes. And then in addition to the Tiki Torch speakers, you'll be entered to win a Kindle Oasis. We'll be giving away a $500 gift certificate, and we'll be giving, for every response we get, we'll be giving a donation to the first book to help a child's needs. So we appreciate your help and just better understanding what's happening with cloud adoption across the country. And I will go ahead and turn the time over to Mahesh.
Hello everyone, this is Mahesh. In this part, a little about my background. I've been in IT industry for the past 18 years and mostly around EBS and EBS related integrations and other ERP solutions interface with EBS. Involved in 200 plus Oracle DB migrations to various cloud platforms, involved in 10 plus EBS migrations to cloud analysis, executions, and post-cloud migration support and stabilization throughout the journey. So what I'll be talking through during this presentation is about what we at Datavail come across and what are the key differentiators in making a cloud journey is much more smooth and transparent versus a reactive scenario. So these details will be very high level because the cloud challenge itself, cloud journey itself is different for each and every customer based on their current footprint and the advantages that they're going to get from going to cloud. So we'll be going through, but irrespective of which cloud platform it is, what solutions you will be using in different areas, but these 7 areas, if you go through those key areas, you will be able to fairly understand, okay, what are the challenges? How can you prepare for those challenges? What is your corrective action? So you will be one step ahead of your cloud journey and making it much more smoother and transparent for everyone else in your team and your end users. So with that said, we've seen a little bit about my background as well. So about Datavail, a brief description. So I'm also practice lead at Datavail for EBS and Oracle applications. We provide various solutions based on the need, and we are particularly talented in performance tuning EBS applications and its interfaces, whatever may be the scenarios. And cloud migrations with EBS and non-EBS Oracle applications as well, and health checks, in particular in stabilizing your environment, whether current on-prem or on cloud. That's a little bit about Datavail and our background. We spoke a little bit. So various companies, what we've seen is like the little bit of stats around cloud adoption by various end user community and cloud adoption process. We've seen based on RightScale's 2019 report, 94% of companies now use cloud computing some form or fashion. 84% of companies use multiple clouds, and 58% of that use a hybrid cloud strategy. So that means in some form or other, at least one cloud is present in every IT company infrastructure layout. And then 84% of them, they have multiple clouds in their IT infrastructure. And then 58% of them have even more complex, more wide range of cloud footprint in their this thing. So when it comes to, if we take this scenario and apply it towards EBS, we see that, yeah, whatever is simple and easy applications that can be migrated to cloud, they're probably already there on cloud. They started the journey and completed the journey in various, depending on when they started the cloud journey, it is done. But when it comes to EBS, from our experience, we've seen that EBS cloud journey is kind of one of the last ones, given that its complication and familiarity with the cloud, being comfortable with the cloud and its operational needs, and being able to meet the SLAs and various scenarios. So, so while moving, IT trend of moving on-premise workloads to the clouds shows no signs of slowing down. So more and more customers getting comfortable with the cloud adoption, migrating to cloud, and changing their operations with cloud functionality. And it's day by day. It's pretty soon will be all out of data centers and all on cloud. And cloud migrations are intricate and complex projects that require expertise in order to ensure successful and smooth migrations for EBS applications in particular. If you are coming from EBS background, it is very well known that it is a very tightly integrated application with various technical components and various services, and the way they function and how that whole EBS application works together with various features and how complex the implementation is. So it is very important and very critical for EBS applications to review certain items upfront and then plan for the EBS readiness and then start the journey. It is key that before starting cloud migration, businesses ensure a thorough and holistic migration plan is put in place. What this means is, for the most of the time, when we do a POC, the approach is, okay, is it working, right? Is my application up and running? Is my DB up and running? Am I able to log in? So the POC in most scenarios versus EBS, it is key for us to conduct the POC more or less like UAT. And when we take UAT, it's just not, it doesn't stop with just a regression test, load test. You also need to think about your operational activity. For the in POCs, mostly this gets this stays out of POC for the most part, but it is important to review all your operational components post migration and take care of those as part of your planning. So it is very important that holistic migration plan, not just the migration plan, pre during the cutover, during the migration, post-migration, before you reach a stabilization mode, what are all the different areas that you need to test? You need to review and plan, and then execute. So, and in this presentations, we'll discuss key areas to review that area, are an absolute must for any Oracle EBS or preparing for a journey to the cloud. And we will be talking through key risk areas to be prepared, with action plan and contingency in planning phase versus being reactive. Meaning, okay, we've tested POC and then, okay, this particular component changed, this particular storage solution changed. And then if you don't do these things upfront, you may end up multiple iterative testing scenarios. And we'll come across some of these as we go through these slides. So what are those 7 key essential elements that we are talking about? In my experience, for the most part, everyone is worried about interface jobs and performance. That comes to be like, if someone is worried about their EBS cloud migration, what is my main concern? If it is application owner, probably it will come out as the first thing as interface job and its performance and related SLAs. That's one of the key item, and that needs to be on your first item, because that dictates several things and the complexity within your migration journey. And the second part is applications versions and certification version status, in which we will have to look at the what versions you have, where do you want to go, what are the key things that could change your direction and add 1 or 2 additional steps based on where you are. And while determining which cloud platform is the only option, or do I have multiple options, that depends on your certification status and how your application is architectured is built as of now. And then the next big part when it comes to cloud and limiting your options with respect to performance, this is true for more than average customers on EBS if they are medium to large performance oriented or large EBS footprint. And we'll be talking a few pointers that needs to be reviewed and how cloud impacts and changes your options when it comes to cloud storage. And the data migration strategy. What it is, how much downtime do you have? What can you do to keep the downtime to be minimum, irrespective of which cloud platform you choose? What are the options? Because these options are different on each platform, and the various components you need to make it happen. So depending on the various scenarios that could impact your overall downtime, and as well as the project length with respect to data migration strategy. And the other option is, the next one is storage footprint. This will be crucial for customers with a very large database in terabytes of size. And the current on-prem, if they are using any solution that comes with deduplication and compression and reduces current production to non-production number of environments and the overall storage footprint, how does it look like once you migrate your EBS along with all your non-prod environments? How is that going to look like? And we'll be looking at few key items to review there as well. And the testing strategy. As I mentioned earlier, so the testing strategy is the only thing that gives, I mean, by default, which is obvious, but in cloud scenario, this will be very important, because before cloud migration, all other migrations, you always have options to quickly solve the problem with an additional cost, additional compute, changing something. But when it comes to cloud, you're kind of left with what is available there. It's not very easy to quickly change something, implement something, and solve the problem. So it is very important to have this testing strategy, not just the regression test, load test, every other task that you will be doing in your operational activity. The testing strategy plays a key role in making sure that you have less surprises post go live. And the seventh one being the future state backup and monitoring solutions. And this is also important because this could impact your clone and how long it takes for backup and what's your RTO, RPO for your EBS applications. Does it still meet your SLA as you have it on-prem? So we'll be going through these scenarios to understand what to look for, how to prepare for in each area to make it smooth for you and everyone involved in the project. So the first one being interface jobs. In this, identify all interface jobs and their connection methods. What it means is that you may have 10 or 100, 200 or more interface jobs. So the key in understanding interface jobs is what do you have what is your current footprint? Do you have all your applications within your on-prem data center, or do you have that current setup, some already on cloud, some on-prem, and only EBS is moving to cloud, or every application is going to the same cloud? So because that may not be completely in your control. What you control, if you're controlling only EBS environment and its migration, it is very important to understand what is the current footprint and their connection method, how each job dependency is, versus when EBS is taken out of current on-prem and placed it on whatever target that is identified as appropriate for your application and needs. Unless you go through this exercise, one, it gives you the comfort to know, okay, these are all the things that are going to be impacted. I see this is not a problem, this is a problem, or this will be a challenge. So this kind of exercise kind of takes you through for preparing for interfaces, right? And in which, and in which you have to look at connection methods. Is it a connection method? Is it a file-based transfer? Is it a SOA-related interface? Or is it a DB link related interface? How is processing done? How processing is done? How it could change when you move to cloud? One of the example that I can take is when interface job, when you're on-prem and when the applications are tightly integrated, you are looking at, there is a possibility that you may have a DB link, which is used to integrate a process between two applications. When you take EBS from on-prem to cloud or vice versa, that interface, which is never a problem, all of a sudden can become a problem due to the way the process is designed to work using the DB link versus transferring the data to either local or a target location and then processing the data versus doing it over the network. That poses a great threat for your performance needs and SLA needs. So this is one example, but it is important to go through all interface jobs and their intricate details. And while reviewing the interface jobs, it is important to make sure that the connectivity still works. It is important to make sure that the job runs as expected, completes as expected. But at the same time, it is also important to make sure that we look at the transaction volumes and related stats, which should include peak, non-peak scenarios as well, so that you have, as I said, less surprises going forward. But that's going to be very key item for any EBS migration. The second one being applications versions and certification status, in which it is important to know what is your current EBS application version. And that along with application, database, and OS level certification as well. So with that said, some customers could be on 12.1.3. So the example being Premier support for EBS 12.1.3 will end in December 2021. If you're running EBS on 12.1.3, you need to review the strategy of upgrading first to 12.2 and then migrate, or vice versa, or even merge them together to get benefit from the single test scenario if time permits and if your environment is not that complicated. But understanding what are the key things for you to be ready to go to cloud and stabilize your environment within the shortest span of time. And then other complications that you might come across is like if you're already on, if you need cross-platform migration or not. If you're on Sun, Solaris, AX, or any other platform, and you may have to go towards the Linux, Oracle Linux, Red Hat Linux, whatever may be the right approach. And then if you need to perform EBS application upgrade, you need to perform any DB upgrade, that needs to be reviewed. And one of the key thing, given the time right now, we've come across some customers being on 12.1.3 and thinking about, okay, do I upgrade first, or do I migrate first, or do I do it together? That's another key item to be reviewed. With the 12.2 supported till 2030, that gives you ample time. But whether you're going towards a SaaS solution or infrastructure as a solution and you're just going to live with it, there are several areas that could impact this decision. But if you are planning to, because the entire enterprise is going to cloud and you need to move with them, sometimes you may be forced to just take it and place it on cloud and then think about what else can be done. So this is another key area that could impact your project timeline: when to start, when to finish, how much time do you have, based on these scenarios. And other things to consider when it comes to certification status is like, do you have rack in place? If you have rack in place, your options could be less on which cloud platform you can go to. But that being said, EBS, there is some terminology out there that says EBS is not supported on cloud. But by published note from Oracle, what it means is that it is not explicitly certified, but supported. What it means is that they haven't tested the combination that you are on, but as long as your application performs on non-virtualized environment and you're able to reproduce that issue, they will solve it. But if it is something that they cannot reproduce that a non-virtualized environment, and it is identified as something to do with the underneath virtualized environment and how it is operating, then they will tell you to go work with the vendor or whoever is providing the underneath solution. So, and that is applicable for EBS too, EBS environment application as well. So yes, EBS is supported, not explicitly certified, but then that is one key area to review how comfortable you are with that statement and what are the risks associated with it. And again, this can be addressed as part of your testing to give you the confidence. Yes, everything I need to be doing on cloud, I've tested everything. That emphasizes more on your testing strategy as well as your POC strategy. So those are some items. And if you have Oracle RAC, is another kind of a deal breaker on some platforms because Oracle says that RAC is not supported. But there are solutions out there for each cloud platform to make it work, right? But again, each customer and their relationship with Oracle and how to interpret these published nodes needs to be closely reviewed, and then accordingly decide where they should go. Yep. And while choosing the approach, it is also important to understand, okay, doing upgrade first and migration later, understand pros and cons for each option as part of your planning discussion. That helps you better prepare and decide when you want to start, how much time you'll have to finish the project, and various things like that. All right, so the next item is current storage solution. So this will be, for the most part, like whether rack is there or not. If rack is there, that's one additional complexity. But for the most part, even if you don't have rack, but you may have high throughput requirements with respect to storage, and the one thing that makes a difference in cloud platform is this current storage solution. When we choose storage solution on cloud, it is always difficult to find the right solution. It is difficult, not impossible, but this is the most challenging part when we choose cloud, because for each cloud platform, the way the default services are offered with respect to IO performance is varying on each platform. Some it is not so complicated. Some, like Oracle Exadata and other solutions, which is Oracle built machine for Oracle's best performance, it makes it less complicated. But when we go to other cloud platforms, there are third-party solutions that can be integrated for storage solution, which gives you more or less the same performance that you have on-prem, or even better, with cloud agile being the scenario, meaning you don't have to purchase any hardware, or you don't have to plan for capacity growth and other things. You just increase when you need it. But which is not standard offering from most clients, but there are solutions out there that will solve your problem with respect to storage. And when we consider storage on-prem, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, on-prem, if you have like Extreme IO or EMC solutions or other solutions out there where you can reduce your non-prod footprint by a lot. When it comes to non-prod footprint, let's say if your production is 5 terabyte, you have for non-prod 20 terabyte, 25 terabyte of footprint. On-prem, if you have deduplication and compression solution in place, your total footprint could be less than 7 terabyte. But when you go to cloud, that will not be the case. It is going to be prod equivalent to prod, non-prod, and every other instance. So that may increase your storage cost. That needs to be reviewed closely. But at the same time, the key thing to design or host your Oracle EBS is the appropriate storage configuration that will support your EBS throughput requirement. So when we look at EBS throughput requirement, you will have to look at your on-prem database IOPS requirement during the close period, nightly batch processing period, non-business. So those two, batch processing time zone and close period and workday 2, workday 3, whatever may be the key day for you to make sure that, okay, whatever I'm building from the get-go, when there is load, that is concurrency load, what is my IOPS requirement? Let it be one time a month, but that is kind of key for EPS that you don't want to come across close related issues during the close. So even if it is one time a month, it is important to identify what is that peak usage for you to be stable when you go there. It needs to be identified. Once it is identified, for the most part, it is not a big challenge, but where it is very performance oriented, a performance centric EBS application, it is key to review those details and identify the storage solution. Again, on the storage solution, there are third-party solutions that are available, which will give you more or less the same performance you have or even better performance, but those are not default options. With the default options can probably satisfy 30 to 50% of the um, storage footprint reductions, because there are several options out there. That's where the most of the time will be spent identifying what is your disk that you're going to choose and what IOPS requirement, whether it is striped, non-striped, what options are available, and at the same time VM level limitations also needs to be reviewed, because everything on cloud is fixed. You cannot change those characteristics later on. So it is very, very important to see every level, disk level, VM level, network level, region level limitations to be reviewed and completely understand how your storage and throughput will be impacted. So by going through your peak on-prem usage during workday 2, workday 3, and batch job runtimes every day, backup runtimes, wherever on-prem you go through this IO throughput requirements, if you could review all that, it will help you greatly. And it is a must to review these items to right size your target server build. As I said, this is most complicated part when it comes to identifying the target server. So as I listed earlier, potential areas to review: virtual machine size, network throughput, disk types, and configurations. For the most part, virtual machine, that is CPU, RAM, and network throughput, these are not so complicated, but the disk type that you're going to choose, because for the same size, you can have less throughput, more throughput based on which disk type you're choosing. So it is very, very essential to understand your on-prem throughput requirement. And any changes here will lead to multiple iterations of your testing scenario when you're performing your tests. So choosing the appropriate disk configuration during the first iteration itself is very key, with keeping cost and every other option in every other component that could impact your selection. So the next item is data migration strategy. Again, this data migration strategy varies from each platform. Example being OCI, AWS, Azure, zero downtime migration strategies, and the components involved in each of them. Each cloud platform have their own solutions. So it is important to define how much downtime do you have. If you want to call it, hey, I have 6 hours, I have 24 hours, 48 hours, I have only 2 hours to shut it down and start up the services on target, which is near zero downtime scenario. That needs to be defined upfront and as part of the POC that needs to be executed, because that will become key for you to execute number of times and for all your environments, and how you take all your non-prod to cloud, at what point you're going to take them there, how does it work, it works as anticipated, and freeze this strategy, because this is definitely one key challenge uh, when it comes to data migration strategy. If this is not identified upfront and exercised, and all the components work as anticipated with one execution or multiple executions, any change in this process could potentially move your migration dates a lot, depending on how much other options need that prep work or work that needs to be executed, and how much it would impact your production current state, and what additional configurations that you may have to do on production server to make that happen. So this is another key item with respect to downtime, and then what options are available on each cloud platform. The bigger the size, the bigger the challenge, particularly when DB size is bigger and downtime window is minimal. Again, it's just a challenge. It can be easily addressed with the proper planning and proper POC and testing scenario. Um, that's one key item. Again, assure a process is identified and works as anticipated as part of POC to avoid possible delays to overall project. So storage footprint, this is for the most part applicable for the customers with a large database footprint and most number of non-prod environments you have, and how frequently you clone them, right? So as I explained earlier a little bit, that if you have compression and deduplication in current storage solution, when it goes to cloud, it's going to expand. It's going to go back to like 10 years or 7 years before scenario where you had prod like storage and all non-prod. Yes, you may have different tiers of storage solution, but on cloud, you have to think about these things, right? Like, okay, I'm putting my production on this kind of disk configuration. How about my non-prod? How about my UAT? How about my performance environment? Am I going to use the same disk configuration? Am I going to use different configuration? How is that going to be, and how is that going to impact my impact my overall cost? Are you actually, if the cost is the key thing that you're going to cloud, is that still valid? Right, and this is kind of key to review with respect to performance and storage footprint post migration, how it looks like, right? And then the key is the storage on-prem storage is giving you a certain level of throughput to meet your SLAs. To mimic that kind of performance on cloud, with respect to storage footprint reduction in non-prod, and the latency with respect to prod and non-prod, and test environment, performance test environments, you need to look at those factors and then determine whether it is going to be cost effective or not, because there are solutions out there that will make it possible. But if your cost analysis is purely based on standard catalog price for some disk size, just looking at the size, not looking at the performance, that storage cost could go double, triple, depending on what your requirements are. So this is another key item to make sure your storage option that you're selecting is still within the budget, but yet still meets your performance requirement as well. But again, the solutions are out there to solve the technical problems, but it changes the cost factor. That needs to be reviewed. And if you have operational budget to maintain their entire EBS with certain cost, yes, you're reducing the cost on just the VM and other things, but how about the backup solution, monitoring solution, and the underneath storage solution? How much it is going to increase the cost, and with respect to interfaces, egress, and other things, it is very important to pay close attention to the storage footprint and how it is going to look like in future. So the next item is testing strategy. So every item that we touched so far in one form or the other, um, it touches testing, because in traditional way of testing is a little bit different. Usually we'll perform POC just to make sure it works. And then during the UAT phase, we'll make sure that 90% of the scenario works. But when it comes to cloud migration strategy, the POC is more or less like UAT scenario. You would perform everything thinking that, okay, this is it. I don't have another option to change my, yes, you can perform POC iterations multiple times if you identify during your journey that I've tested and something is not meeting my requirement and it is available to fix based on the solution that is readily available on cloud. You quickly make that change. Change is quick, but making sure whether that change is going to meet your requirement or not, you have to repeat the entire testing again. So the testing strategy is to include both regression and load test scenarios, not just jobs running and completing, but runtimes to be reviewed along with volume details. Like, okay, job completed, it processed 10 million records or 10,000 records, and it's the runtime, and compared to on-prem, this is how much the degradation is or improvement is. Is this acceptable for us or not? That's the key for each and every interface or each and every KPI. We may not be able to do 100% of testing. That's obviously a challenge, but it is must for all KPIs, key performance indicators, that they go through this scenario, and then they made this. It is still something that can be delivered under the SLA with these changes. But it is important, as I said, the simple way to put it is perform your testing as if it is UAT in your POC phase, which is a little bit different. But for cloud journey to be smooth, the get-go itself, the POC is the most key important thing to make it successful, and then reviewing these aspects as part of the testing strategy will give you better confidence when it comes to, yes, I'm confident that this solution is going to work for me. And when we are building the POC, it is also important to build it like prod, right? As if you change one particular, okay, I'll go with the smaller CPU and smaller memory because it's easy to change to a bigger one. Yeah, but like depending on your testing strategy, right? If you change any of these characteristics, you may end up repeating that entire testing cycle and analyzing that. You may increase the number of iterations. So it is observed that building it like prod, testing it in the POC phase like it is UAT, makes your whole, not only just the POC, getting confidence in executing this project with ease, but at the same time meeting all your executing your tasks as part of migration and cutover to be within your grasp. The last item that needs to be reviewed, which gets sometimes overlooked during the POC phase, which is future state backup and monitoring solutions. Review what are the tools that you're using now. Is it going to be the same or it's going to be different? Whatever backup solution, the scenarios are like, you may have all your infra workload going to the same cloud, or the workload going to multiple cloud solutions. And when that is happening, where is your backup solution? How to perform the backup? Do you need to build your own backup solution just for EBS? And similarly for monitoring solutions, because whatever is out there by default on cloud platforms, for the most part, they may not be sufficient for your requirement, let it be DB level or OS level and various levels. So it is important to understand what that is and how you're going to implement, and factor that cost into your cost estimate. And another thing that majorly impacts you with respect to this is how are you going to impact? Are you going to impact your RTO and RPO recovery point objective, real recovery time objective? Are you going to impact those? And then is with the backup and database clone process, will you be able to clone your non-prod environments as you would do on-prem? And is it going to meet all your SLAs? Again, this is somewhat related with the storage footprint also, footprint reduction solutions that are available and to be reviewed, but this is something that will be left out for the most part. But this needs to be reviewed as well to make sure that we see this entire plan through. Um, um, that way you know, okay, how my journey is going to be, how do I feel about each area, where do I need to spend time in identifying the solutions, where do I need to spend more time, so that once I start executing the project, I don't have surprises and delays, or even post-production, I don't have surprises. And then another item that we do come across is, once you go to cloud, how is that going to integrate with your ITSM solution? How would it impact? How does it change the dynamics of different teams working with each other? That needs to be reviewed as well. All right. So at the end, what did we learn, or what is that we understood from this exercise is, it's not speaking to any specific solution, but it's speaking to the major challenges that you would come across, right? So by going through these 7 items that are listed, unknown concern will turn into known concern and possible action plan to address them as part of planning, which makes the cloud journey much more smooth and transparent for various teams involved in a platform change. And as part of zero downtime, Datavail does offer zero downtime cloud migrations. Datavail zero downtime migration services guarantees that you can transfer your operations from on-prem to servers, on-premise servers to the cloud quickly and easily. And this is very simple solution for Oracle database, but when it comes to EBS, it is much more complex, because it will have all the integrations with respect to OAM single sign-on solutions at application database level, or any other custom SSO solutions you may have. As part of our every migration that we do, we holistically review your IT environment. That speaks to what is your current footprint, how do you interface, and what is your future state with all those interface jobs. That is step 1. Determine your unique benefits, challenges, and requirements based on how your EBS application is currently built. We will be able to review that and see some of the benefits, some of the challenges, and help you understand what those are, and generate detailed cloud readiness report. So after going through certain scenarios, okay, before you start your journey, these are all the things you need to do, and for so and so reasons, and we can make you see that like a mock exercise for you, and execute the lift and shift cloud migrations once that is reviewed and executed. and perform software integrations related to EBS. So when EBS is migrated from to one location to other location, it's not just building the database and application, but at the same time making sure it still interfaces with all the applications, and any issues that you may come across with those integrations, you wouldn't go and search for a specific skill set or SME in those areas. And as our team is big enough and we have SMEs across all areas, we'll be able to address this. And then finally, monitor and manage the environment's performance throughout the migration. That is key. As I said, like, given the cloud and given the test strategy, it is important. It's not just the during performance test. Throughout the journey, each and every environment needs to be monitored and compared with on-prem similar behavior, and if we see any anomalies that needs to be identified. All right, that takes us to the end of the presentation, and I thank you everyone for joining this call, listening to me on this, and here a few details on how to contact us. All right, Hannah, I think we can take questions now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mahesh. This was a really great and informative session. We do have a number of questions, so I'll go ahead and read them. If you haven't sent in a question and you do still have them, please feel free to type that in the question box. We do have some time, and if we don't get to all the questions, of course, we will follow up, or Mahesh will follow up with answers so that you can get that answered. The first question that we have is, can you give me an example for interface jobs when you migrate from EBS to cloud?
Interface, it can be invoice processing, it can be web entries. How do you get your web entries into your system? How do you process your invoices, and how do you get your HR file system, HR data integrated within your EBS? How do you send EDF files? These are all the examples related to EBS interface jobs. Or you can even take, like, you have a data warehousing system, nightly ETL, micro ETL, how do they perform? These are all various interfaces.
Great, thank you. The next question is, for bigger DB, can you give some size? Is 10 terabytes huge?
Yes, so that question is, yes, we consider 10 terabytes is bigger DB, not very large, but bigger. But that is an even more challenge if you have performance requirements, something like 1 millisecond latency at database level. No matter what query you run on the database, if the response time needs to be less than 1 millisecond, 2 millisecond is the very technical way of answering it. But when you have that kind of throughput requirement, that's when the challenge is going to be more in deciding your storage solution.
That makes sense. The next question is the session for cloud migration as SaaS, PaaS, or IaaS?
So for the most part, EBS, that's a good question. For the most part, EBS is infrastructure as a service. It is a simple, straightforward. We are not talking about going from 12.1.3 Oracle Cloud applications. We're talking about taking your existing EBS and placing it on cloud. And when it comes to placing it on cloud, there is no solution that gives you like in a way lift and shift and says that, okay, I'll convert your EBS to SaaS. That is something for you to take care of it. But if you're taking EBS cloud migration, this is mainly for infrastructure as a service, and that is the only option you have. Anything else, it's a whole completely going to cloud applications is a completely functional area.
Thank you. The next question is, you mentioned load testing. Is that allowed for non-bare metal EBS platforms on Oracle Cloud?
Sorry, come again. Non-EBS, did you say? Okay, I see the question. Yeah, non-bare metal EBS platform. when you say non-bare metal EBS platform, it needs a follow-up, because I'm not sure, like when we say EBS platform, what does that exactly it means? But the load testing is what you decide. So if you're going to infrastructure as a service, right, you're not going to PaaS, you're not going to SaaS. So whatever may be the underneath storage solution or the architecture you're adopting, whether it is VM or bare metal, the load test is mandatory for you. Whatever may be the solution you're opting, it is important for to go through that load test. What that load test is, what you define based on your month-end jobs, peak usage, non-peak usage, batch processing window, backup window. What are all those load test scenarios that you're talking about? How many concurrent users? So this is applicable irrespective of the underneath platform you're choosing. Even with Exadata as your platform, you host your DB there, you still need to go through this to make sure you are getting what you want. Hopefully that answers your question, but if it needs a follow-up, please contact us on the prayer screen. Yeah, we'll be able to answer any further questions on those.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, I'm seeing we may not get to all the questions. And again, Mahesh, if you want to put up your contact information there again, and we will also record all of these questions and can reach out in case we don't get time to answer them all. The next question is, how do you achieve zero downtime migrations? Can you provide high-level steps?
So zero migration is the biggest challenge is with how do you get your production data to be available on target site, meaning it is zero downtime, meaning it is near zero downtime, because application can still transfer from one database to other database. It still needs a bounce, but it's the 2 hours versus, or 30 minutes, 1 hour versus 20 hours, where you shut down your on-prem production and bring the data over to the cloud. And when it comes to data migration, each cloud platform, Azure offers ASR, AWS offers Cloud Endure, Oracle offers DataGuard and Standby and data transfer appliances. And there are a sequence of steps that need to be performed, but what tool gets used in each and what are the advantages, whether it is a default option or a third-party option that needs to be adopted, that depends on your size and your complexity and downtime requirements. But there are ways to keep your, I mean, what it means is you're going to start your data syncs way ahead, and once the initial sync is done, from there onwards on the target side, whatever this component solution that you're going to use, that will keep track of delta changes on the source and then propagates those changes to the target. When you come across the cutover time, there will be, like, let's say if you shut it down and then you have 15 minutes of data that needs to be transferred to the target, and that's all it's going to take for you to shut down on-prem, start up target, and then start up your applications. That's how it is achieved. So the journeys, the data migration starts way ahead, but the cutover window becomes the smallest window possible.
Right, thank you. There's a number of questions still, so I think we have time for one or two more. And again, we will absolutely follow up if we don't get to all the questions. The next one is, what are the benefits of on-premise versus infrastructure as a service? What are the cost benefits?
So the cost benefit is definitely there, right? The major benefit is that when you are on-prem, you have to maintain your hardware. And every time it's coming to end of cycle, then you're going through the recycling of infrastructure. And you are maintaining your own infrastructure cost with respect to storage, network, sysadmin, all these areas. But when you go to the cloud, all this overhead goes away and you're just paying for the services you're using. And when it comes to infrastructure as a service on cloud, you pay for what you use, meaning you are using 8 by 5 by 7, that means 8 by 7, sorry, 5 by 8 by 5, 5 days, 8 hours a day, and other times you don't need to use it, you can shut it down through automation, hibernate it. So you're only paying for 8 hours compute per day, not the storage, but compute and memory. So you're saving cost, and you have a requirement to build a new environment on-prem. It takes months, or depending on how efficient your IT is, it could take weeks and months. Whereas on cloud, it could be done, the VM provisioning itself could be done in like less than in minutes if you need. So those are things that you would come across. Why go to cloud? That's a whole different area, but it is proven that it gives, and it is kind of in the last 5 years, everyone, the first slide we saw about how many people are on cloud and what form and what percentage is on cloud speaks to that benefit.
Great, thank you so much. There are a few questions, but I see we're about time, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time today. So I just want to say enormous thank you to you, Mahesh, for presenting this e-learning session and for answering all of these questions. And again, the questions that we did not answer, we will follow up on. Huge thank you to everyone for joining us today. And just a reminder that OETUG members will have access to this recording and the full slide deck in the knowledge base. Please feel free to connect with Mahesh and Datavail if you have questions, or reach out to us at OETUG. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day, and thank you all again.
Yep, I thank you everyone for joining and listening to these details. Thank you.